Hey, everybody. Welcome to this very special edition of Coaching from the Couch, your weekly DMV sports update. I am your host, making a comeback earlier than anticipated, Seawall, as you all know. And listen, I said this is a special edition. And Thursday nights, that used to be my only night, used to be my night, Thursdays. For this very special edition, Bowie TV Sports will be bringing you a draft recap. So we're doing the Baltimore Ravens as well as the Washington Commanders. So very, very soon, I will have my Bowie TV Sports colleague, Carita Parks, joining me to talk all things Baltimore Ravens. So I know this is a little different, right? I know it's a little different, but change is good. And for this particular uh, huge draft event, we thought it was good to bring everybody together. So up first will be Carita talking about the Baltimore Ravens in the draft picks. So tag in the Ravens flock. You absolutely want to make sure that the Ravens flock is watching, because if they miss this, then they really just missed it. I mean, you can always watch it later, right? But tag in the Ravens flock, your favorite Baltimore Ravens fans, and then absolutely Commanders fans. I am staying on to make sure we go through the draft picks for the Washington Commanders. So we have to go through a couple of housekeeping items, as you all know. This is a live Bowie television recording. Everything we say and do here is on Bowie TV. So if you are watching from the Bowie TV in the YouTube streams, hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. If you are tuning in from Facebook, please make sure you hit that love button and share the show. Your comments should be coming through. I know you'll have a ton of questions, as you should, and say hello. Drop it in the chat. It's been a while. I know folks may follow Carita online. They may follow myself online. But if you're watching, definitely drop in the chat a hello. And we're going to try to answer as many questions as we possibly can. Carita will be joining probably around 7:40 or so. But if you are checking in, and this will be new for Baltimore Ravens fans. I know the Commanders fans, you're used to seeing me. But Baltimore Ravens flock, welcome. We want to welcome you with open arms as well. Because, hey, listen, we're not even in the same division, so it should be okay. But both teams play in Maryland. So we figured it'd be good to knock both of them out. So you definitely want some of the content for the Baltimore Ravens. You want that to be shown and shared. Carita will be popping on here in a moment. And I'm waiting to say hello to all of the DMV sports fans. I see Joy from the Seawall team has checked in. She'll be sharing and commenting. This is something for everybody, really, because if you are in the area, you're a Commanders fan. And if you're not a Commanders fan, then chances are you're a Baltimore Ravens fan. So if you can get all of the scoop in one space, that's what we're going to try our best to give you on this very special edition of the weekly DMV Sports Update. So you all drop in the chat how you felt about the NFL draft overall. There was a lot of coverage. Tap in if you've watched and followed Bowie TV Sports all throughout the draft. We definitely have to say a hello and give a shout out to our colleague Jade Griffin, who was holding down the fort in Detroit. It has actually made me laugh several times because some folks thought that I was in Detroit. And I was like, no, I was not in Detroit. Carita was not in Detroit. Jade the photographer, videographer extraordinaire, was holding it down for Bowie TV Sports in Detroit. So all of that content that was being dropped, shout out to Jade Griffin on everything that she's doing. It's amazing to be working with her. She was absolutely phenomenal. So say hello to her, you all, and tag her in if you know her, to say, Seawall is talking about you. All great things, of course. So give her a shout out. Hit a love button if you loved all her pictures in her video from Detroit. So that was a lot of fun, and that was cool. I was at Commanders Park and Carita was at Under Armour. So we did the whole notion of Bowie TV Sports in 3 locations. And if you thought we were in multiple locations, we were. It just wasn't us individually. Individually, we were in our own locations, if that makes sense. But I'm glad the illusion worked. That's awesome. And I see Stephen Askins has dropped in. Stephen, make sure you're sharing this show with your DMV sports loving family and friends. If you know any Baltimore Ravens fans, make sure they are tapped in, because the Ravens coverage will be first, and then we'll get into the Washington Commanders coverage as well. It's so much. It's so much now, you all. I mean, we're going through all of the things. So I want to make sure everybody is tapped in. Ravens flock. The rookies are in town. Rookie camp is this weekend. Carita will be talking more about that. Commanders fans, the rookies will be there next week. Rookie camp for the Commanders is next weekend. And let me just say this. I always thought Ravens flock was a pretty cool hashtag. I always thought it was nice. And it is very nice. So shout out to all the Ravens. Shout out to all the Ravens fans. Seriously. And hit the love button, tap in, say hello so that I know you're watching and we can give you a shout out. Drop any questions you may have so that we can make sure we note those, because it's going to be very important to get through all of those questions. So this new Commanders hashtag, let me just go ahead and get that out of the way. This new Commanders hashtag, raise hell. I like that. I like that hashtag a lot. I was like, well, who? Let me find out. Let me just ask and figure that out, right? Let's figure out who was the genius behind that hashtag, because that was a good one. If I must say so myself, that raised hell hashtag is a good one. So, and I think it's fitting. I think it's going to fit very, very well. So you all raise hell. That's right. That one was a good one. And overall, all of the fans watching right now, for your particular team, share what you're thinking right now. Share how you're feeling about draft. Sometimes, coming out of draft, you can feel really good. Other times you could say, you know what? It's too soon. And I think that's for everybody, right? For everybody, it's always looking at the draft and you're kind of like, who knows what this is really going to turn into and what this is really going to be when everything is all said and done. But I think it's important for sure to talk about it. Let's talk about it and let's see, if it fits all of the aspects and just kind of all of the things that you may be anticipating for your team. And with that being said, and I see some comments coming through, Stephen, I hope you stay on for the Commanders draft recap. You all make sure you're tapping in the Ravens flock, because we absolutely at Bowie TV have someone who is on site, on the ground with the team. And y'all going to hear me if you haven't already. And you've probably seen my posts that like to reiterate daily, on site media because that is a very important point. You all know I like to get on the show and say things like, hey, pay attention to this because this is a very important point. And a very important point is daily on-site media here. You all know me on the Washington Commanders beat, but you all, if you haven't met her yet, you're about to meet her now. I'm about to bring in Carita Parks. Hey, Carita. Wait a minute, hold on. Can you hear me? Oh, wait, are you on mute? Who is that? You might be on mute, Carita.
Hello.
Hey, and I'm looking and I'm like, oh, the background is up. That's good. And so it may not be by the time I play a video. You might have to get Destiny back on here. And so everybody say hi to Jade. We were talking about Jade earlier, and we were sharing that Jade was holding it down in Detroit for us. So make sure love button, fire emojis for Jade and all of her content. It definitely gave the illusion that we were in 3 locations, which we were. It just was
no illusion.
It's really an illusion. And folks say, oh, how was the draft in Detroit? I'm like, I wouldn't know. I really wouldn't know. And so we're seeing the good evenings. And if you all are popping in on YouTube, make sure you're hitting the like, make sure you're subscribing. We are doing a special edition of the weekly DMV Sports Update where Carita will be going through the Baltimore Ravens draft and her knowledge of the draft picks. And then I will be going through my knowledge of the Washington Commanders. So I'm telling everybody to lay the land here. I'm interviewing Carita. Isn't that funny? Yes. I'm going to interview Carita. And then I'm going to get on here and talk about myself and then and talk about the Washington Commanders. And hello to our brother, Terrence Pitts of Pitts and Push, who's always got the HBCU coverage going with Bowie TV. So you all, Ravens flock, check in because this one is truly for you. Carita, are you ready to go? I know you're ready to go.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
I shouldn't even ask you that. I'm just going to pull up the picture, right, of
wonderful
the Ravens draft picks. And whenever we need to refer back to this, we can refer back to this. Overall draft. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking about overall with the Ravens?
Overall, I feel like the Ravens, they were able to meet a lot of their needs. They were able to also get some really good players that fell a little bit lower in the draft that they thought would go higher and that they had on their radar screen. And, that's always good when you're able to still pick up some guys that were on your list. Obviously, guys don't like to fall, but they fell right into the Ravens' lap, fell into a great organization. Definitely starting at Combine, Eric DeCosta said he wanted to basically make over the offensive line, and they ended up drafting one offensive lineman. So I would say they didn't do as much on offense through the draft as a lot of people anticipated. Mm-hmm. However, that's really because the board just started falling in their favor. And it's like, we need to get these guys that are still there. And they do feel like they have enough on the roster now to move forward as they have.
So you were there. And let me just go ahead and throw this question out there because Carita, and I see people popping in, love button, fire emoji.
And let me correct myself before somebody calls me out. It was 2 offensive linemen, so I misspoke. I just don't want, people.
Oh, yeah, you got to correct it for the people. You got to correct it for the people. And so you have covered NFL draft, right, on location. Not this year, y'all. It was an illusion. She wasn't there. So in the past, you have covered the NFL draft, and you have now covered on site with the Baltimore Ravens at the team facility for all 3 days. Can you share your perspective on the difference in coverage at the NFL draft and when you're specifically assigned to a team?
Yeah, so I think the NFL draft is more beneficial. When I started my career, I started off more covering a national perspective, several different teams, several different players. So I feel like the NFL draft is very beneficial when it comes to someone who is covering the entirety of the NFL. And of course, if you're covering a team, you might get first dibs on the player at the draft itself. However, and I will also say something else I liked about the draft. They do the NFL Play 60, which is a great opportunity to talk to the draft picks before they're actually drafted. And it's just they're just in a different mindset. They're more laid back. You just get more fun interaction. But aside from that, covering it on site is much different because you are there with all of the decision makers, all of the important people. You get instant access to every player that's drafted via Zoom, and sometimes you're talking to the player before they even go to the podium. So you get that instant access. You're also building a relationship with the reporters that you're on site with every single day because you're literally there for hours for 3 days back to back to back, and so you're really grueling and going through it together. But just being able to every day talk to Eric Costa, talk to John Harbaugh, talk to anybody else that they wanted us to have access to, talk to the players. It was just very beneficial, in my opinion, to be on site because while it's great to be at the draft, after day one is over, the draft really kind of falls off. But when you're on site, there's no fall off. Like you're grinding every single day.
Yes. It is a grind every single day.
Yes.
And I gotta admit, right? Like, I was trying to tell Carita about it because this is transparency, right? Because we're getting in the draft, but it's a part of this process and it's a part of draft that you gotta kind of get, and I think I may have frozen y'all. Can you hear me, Carita?
I can hear you, but you have frozen.
Okay, all right. Let me see if I gotta pop off camera, you guys. Let's see if that works. Maybe not. At any rate, let's keep going. Part of it is I have never covered draft on site at the draft location. I've only been at the commander's location.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like with Carita having that experience of doing both. I wanted her to be able to share, okay, what does it look like to do both?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I'm still frozen. Carita, I'm going to let you go through kind of first impressions of your initial reactions and impressions of Nate Wiggins, the Baltimore Ravens first round pick.
Yeah, Nate Wiggins. I just love his attitude. He's like he said at the combine he's the best corner in the draft, and you'll hear all like the quarterbacks say that, but he definitely said he is the best corner in the draft. And Eric DeCosta, the moment we talked to him, he said he felt like Nate Wiggins is the best cover corner in the draft. He just has this attitude like that fits right into the Ravens. Their defense is extremely physical, and he has that physical mindset, and he's really ready to go. I see him fitting into the corner. So Marlon Humphrey, he should be back. He was injured a lot last season, and he played, I think, in maybe 2 or 3 games, but then he had to come out because he re-injured himself. Brandon Stevens had a breakout season. Both of them play on the outside. Nate will definitely be an outside corner, and that was confirmed by John Harbaugh. They love his speed. There's questions about his frame because he is a smaller corner, but everyone's reminding, Coach and Eric DeCosta, they're reminding everyone that Nate's only 20 years old. So he has time to get bulkier, but he's fast. If you look at the Miami game and the North Carolina game, which was referenced quite a bit, he chased down receivers and saved touchdowns in both of those games. So that's just a different element that he'll be able to bring to the secondary.
It sounded like in the press conference, Carita, and can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. As long as you can hear me, we're gonna be. I'm frozen, but it's fine. And if we shut down, you all trust me, we'll be right back. Promise.
We will.
So, it sounded like there was a lot of excitement from the organization on Nate Wiggins. So can you share with us just overall what the organization thinks about Nate and just how excited they were to be able to grab him at pick 30?
I mean, they were really excited because they felt like they had to come out of the first round with either a corner or an offensive lineman. And Nate Wiggins was their top corner in the draft. They did not think he would still be there at number 30. And so he was. And they were super excited. I mean, if you look at the videos, they were happy to get him. Even when I was at the press conference, just the energy and the excitement around, like you could tell that that's the guy that they wanted, not who they settled for.
That's a good point. The guy that they wanted and not who they settled for. And sometimes you never know picking so late in the first round.
Exactly.
So give us your overall thoughts on the rest of the draft. How did it go? And what were some of the highlights for some of the players?
Well, for the Ravens, I think it went well. They were able, like I said, to get most of the positions that they needed. They needed a right tackle, which they were able to get in Roger Rosengarten. I want to make sure I say his name right. Roger Rosengarten. They were able to get that. They lost Morgan Moses, so he's able to come in and compete for that right tackle spot. They beefed up the defense, and not only did they get Nate Wiggins, but they got TJ Tampa, so who is another extremely talented cornerback that they were able to pick up later in the draft. I like what they were able to do on wide receiver. Devontae Walker, really intrigued by him. Can't wait to see what he can do. But he brings a different element because he's a vertical receiver. He's a downfield threat. They tried to use Rashad Bateman in that way a lot last year, and him and Lamar just were not connecting downfield. So this should take some pressure off of Rashad and let him do what he does best and also provide a downfield threat. And then you got to think they have Derrick Henry now, so that should help open up the field. Let's see, who else did they pick up that I like? Rasheen Ali. We didn't get to talk to him a lot. He's a running back. We didn't get to talk to him a lot, but with Keaton Mitchell, there's still questions because he's coming off a major injury, and he was so great before he was injured, and hopefully that continues. But he provides a little bit of insurance depending on how Keaton Mitchell comes along. So we probably will see a good bit of Rasheen Ali, at least in the preseason, and you never know in the beginning of the season. Like I said, I think it's more so contingent on how Keaton Mitchell comes along. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think that they were able to get all of their needs met for the most part. The biggest question is probably the guard position on the offensive line. They did not draft a guard in particular, but they're pleased with the players that they already have on the roster in that position, but there's no clear favorite for that particular role. So I would say that's probably their biggest question coming out of the draft and going into the rest of the offseason.
And everybody, if you have just tuned in, you are watching a special edition of Coaching from the Couch, the weekly DMV sports update, where I'm frozen right now. But I'm your host, Candi. But y'all can hear me though. And Carita Parks, also from Bowie TV Sports, is our Ravens insider. So she is sharing all the things on the Baltimore Ravens draft. Now, Carita, I got to bring this up, right? And I know we've been heartbroken, okay? Ever since this has happened, we said, okay, we already had our plans, we had our outfits, we just knew that the Baltimore Ravens were going to the Super Bowl. Right. That did not happen. Right. So overall, and there was a lot of pieces, right, that have moved on from coaches to players. So what's your take on how the Ravens are attempting to recover from those missing pieces from the additions in free agency and now draft?
Yeah, so I talked about the draft picks. They added Derrick Henry, which that adds a completely different dimension to the offense because you have Derrick Henry. We've all seen what he's able to do. Lamar Jackson, who is still going to run. So you got to pick your poison. I'm hoping and I'm thinking the wide receiver group will gel more this year because this will be the second year under Todd Monken's offense, and there's not a lot of new pieces at wide receiver. They re-signed Kyle Van Noy, although Jadeveon Clowney is gone. I think within the draft and picking up Adisa Isaac, which I didn't mention, that will also help that position. They picked up the 5th-year option for Adape Owe, and they re-signed Justin Madubuike. So they've done what they can do, and all of the decisions that they needed to make, and all of the guys they really needed to make sure came back are back. Losing Geno Stone on defense was also pretty huge, and Ronald Darby. But like I said, the corners that they got in the draft, have faith in them. And then Sandusi Kane, he's another safety that was added, and they compared him to Geno Stone. So, I think we're seeing they'll definitely look extremely different next year. But with all of the pieces they lost, I feel like they've done a good job filling in those gaps. And Eric DaCosta, he has said himself that, he's not finished building the roster. And we saw that last year. He had a lot of late additions. There were still players coming into training camp that were free agents. So he builds this roster pretty much until September.
So I got to ask another kind of $1 million question, because you were there when I believe the strength and conditioning coach was sharing his thoughts on Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
And what he is looking like already it's May now, but at the time it was in April. So share a bit about the feedback so far on how Lamar is doing.
So I think the biggest takeaway from the strength and conditioning coach is he said, I've never been so excited for Lamar Jackson in April. And I mean, it was as soon as Lamar pulled up to the facility for off-season workouts, it was very clear that he was a lot more slender. So he looked good. I need to know what he did, okay? Because I'm trying to get ready for the summer. And that was fast, you know what I mean? But he was able to turn it around. He's more slender. He doesn't have as much weight on him. The strength and conditioning coach, he said that they're going to work on adding lean muscle. But when you don't have all that weight on you, it's going to be so much easier. Like Lamar's going to look so much cleaner when he runs because he's not going to be carrying as much weight. So, and listen, the Ravens were heartbroken last year. Heartbroken to go all the way to the AFC Championship, to be home, to have all those pieces in place and lose. So I feel like we're going to see Lamar in beast mode.
Listen, we were heartbroken. We are about to be like, we were heartbroken too.
We were definitely, I mean, all signs pointed to the Ravens should have gone to the Super Bowl, but we're going to put our hopes into this.
Now let's talk about who they signed, or is it considered signing or adding on their option? I want to say it right, with Rashad Bateman. And I know you did a couple of one-on-ones with Rashad last year. I know that was big news for Ravens fans. Can you share a bit about what that means? Speaking of Lamar Jackson, the overall offense, and just moves from the offseason, what that means for the Ravens offense.
Well, picking up, so Rashad Bateman, he was due for his 5th-year option, but they actually ended up extending him for 3 years. So his 5th-year option would have only, I think, brought him into, he would have been a Raven until 2025, I believe. But with the extension, he's a Raven into 2026. But that shows a lot of faith in Rashad, because his biggest issue, first-round draft pick, did not play his entire first season due to injury, did not play the entire second season due to injury. And then last year he was able to get through the season healthy. But, when you're coming back from such a major injury, it was a foot injury. When you're coming back from an injury like that, it takes time to gel. back into the offense. He missed training camp, most of training camp, OTAs, like everything that you need to build that chemistry with your quarterback. But signing him to a 3-year extension, despite the injury history, shows that the Ravens still believe in his abilities. And I think that that's going to be such a confidence booster for him. I do think that he may have questioned where he fit into the offense last year, because you got to think there was Odell Beckham Jr., Nelson Aguilar was new last year, Zay Flowers. I mean, there were all these new pieces, and then he's coming back off an injury and having to figure out, where do I stand in this offense? And he didn't have a perfect season last year. He had 2 touchdowns, but big thing for him is he got through the season healthy. And like I said, with the drafting of Devontae Walker, I think that that's going to free up an opportunity for Rashad to do what he does best. And I think he's going to have a whole lot more confidence because he had a full healthy season. He was extended 3 years, and hopefully we'll see him get through all of the off-season activities and build that chemistry that he needs to build back up with Lamar.
So, Carita, this weekend coming up, it's rookie camp. Are you excited?
I'm excited. I'm excited to see these guys on the field. We only see them talking. I want to see what they're working with on the field.
I was not excited. Let me stop.
Hopefully, I looked at the weather. Hopefully, it's not too hot, but I am excited.
And just to be clear, I was only not excited because I thought it was next weekend, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. When does the NFL season stop?" It doesn't stop.
It does not stop. It really doesn't. You get especially for us, because we do Combine, Super Bowl. So yeah, it does not stop.
No, it didn't. It did not. It was a year round. So, Carita, so far, and we know that the season is still far away, but taking in off season and draft, what's your overall grade of how the Ravens have done so far?
So I have been thinking about this, and in my opinion, I'm going to give them an A- because, when you think about salary cap, all of the pieces that they lost, I was like, oh my goodness. But they were able, for the most part, to solve most of those issues between draft and free agency. So I feel like they're in a really good place going into OTAs, mini camp, etc. And I do have faith that Eric DeCosta is not done building the roster, like he said. And so it'll be interesting to see who is actually added along the way.
So that means, Ravens flock, you need to stay tuned to, as you can see here, because you can't see me, at Carita C. Parks on X, into Bowie TV Sports, on X, on YouTube, on Instagram, all of the things, because as long as Carita is there, we are there, and she definitely has the inside scoop on location at Under Armour facilities. So, Carita, I know you look. See, this is how you all know, if you're everybody who's watching and held out, the show is gonna always go on. Okay, it's going to. It's going to always go on. Can you hear me? Because that's the point. All right, you can hear me. We'll figure out the TV part later. It might just be you on TV. I feel like my camera went out, everybody. It just has to go. But of course, Carita, we have to do this again. We have to try to do this more of these. And so, Ravens flock, make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribing. And Washington Commanders fans, come back, because I'm going to log out and then I'm going to jump back in. Carita, thank you. And I'm sure I'll be talking to you at some point tonight for something.
Yes, you're welcome. It was fun.
All righty. I'll see you guys in a bit. Thanks again, Carita, and everybody else, Commanders fans. Tune back in a moment.